told me to deliver this message.
God loving family is all we know. Welcome to the Beautiful Show. God loving family is all we know. Welcome to the Beautiful Show. Welcome to the Beautiful Show.
Hey, beautiful people.
How's everybody doing? My name is Charles.
And I'm Liana.
And welcome to the Beautiful Show. Okay, so for today's topic, we're going to talk about how we found God.
Actually, how God found us.
Yeah, because we were the ones that were lost.
So, let's get into it.
So, what was your encounter, or did you have an encounter, or what was it that, drew you to God to develop the relationship that you have now?
So for me, I was not raised in a church family at all. I love my parents. They were amazing, but
Great people.
we didn't go to church. I only recall us going to church maybe like 2 times.
Twice.
So yeah, I wasn't raised in the church. So God actually found me while I was away at college. So
School.
I went to Penn State. So yeah, I was a college kid. I was a hot mess, just a hot mess or whatever. And yeah, it was just kind of like a revelation. Like one day they were having a revival, and a friend of mine invited me. So typically I was that girl, like when people would talk about church, I'll be like, oh God, he's one of those, like, miss me with all that or whatever.
That's a 2-time mentality.
So my friend, who was a fellow RA, Shakira, she actually just started talking about God while we were on our way back from Walmart, and I was in the car, and for the first time I actually listened, and she was someone that I could relate to. So I'm just like, okay, she's talking about God, like, okay, let's see what this is all about. Long story short, went to a revival, and it was just like an explosive experience for me. Shout outs to Cody for getting that guest pastor to come on post, and I was scared, like, so it was a guest pastor, and then he was going around. It was just a beautiful thing, revival. Something that was greater than me was coming out of me. And then I started speaking in tongues. Mind you, I'm someone, I have no churchy background.
Okay.
I don't know what speaking in tongues means.
Yeah, speaking. That's that.
Shanda.
Okay.
So I was scared. So I was just like, oh my God. Like, I ran out that church so fast. And then I like stood outside the church, and like I just could not move. Like my feet were planted, and something like God was just like, you're not going nowhere. It's okay. Like, so it was just this feeling that something was greater than me, and it was just like someone had control over my life.
Wow.
But it was a positive feeling. It wasn't like, oh God,
you
this
wasn't
is
feeling trapped, like something trapped.
no, or it wasn't like a negative devilish energy. It was just, it was good energy. Like, yo, what is this? I'm scared because it's the unknown.
It's new.
It's new. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so that was my experience.
Yeah. So.
What was your experience or encounter with God?
So mine was nothing like that. It was more of a lifetime realization of God just being in my life and showing favor. I was adopted when I was 13 by the name of Ruby Buford, aka everybody's Nana.
Nana is, oh God,
Yes.
she's an angel on earth.
Everybody, yes. So my mom, she was on drugs. My father, I don't even know who he is. He did live in the Bronx, but I don't even know who he is. I never saw him before. But my mom, instead of giving me to my family, she put me into the foster care system. I don't know the whole story, but it happened. At the end of the day, I could have ended up in a terrible situation.
Or, I mean, even with like a terrible family.
Yeah. But lo and behold, God is so awesome. He placed me with my Nana, Ruby. And while, being raised by her, she is a God-fearing woman.
Yes. Oh God.
You know,
love me some Nana.
Yes, a praying woman. A praying woman. She raised us in the church.
Okay.
You know, so I was 3 years old. You know, we was in the choir. You know, we was at Sunday school every Sunday. Like, she had us in everything. Like, yeah, so that's pretty much what it was for me. All right, so what was some of your major life changes after giving your life over to Christ?
Okay, so I would definitely say, so I was in a very toxic relationship.
Toxic.
For 5 years, y'all. 5 years. I was with a guy who was 3 years older than me, and it was just a toxic relationship, like mental manipulation, physical abuse, all of that stuff. And it was just kind of like, but we just had this toxic attraction to each other, on both ends. Like, no matter what happened between us, it was just kind of like we were always drawn back together. Like, as toxic as we both knew that we were for each other, like, we were always drawn back together. But in this particular occasion, I just felt like I was in bondage to this man. Just in bondage to him, like, no matter what, like, I couldn't leave, you know?
So when you gave your life over to Christ, was that something that helped you, you know, get the strength to pull away from that bondage that
Definitely.
you felt you had?
So when I gave my life to God, it was like the chains immediately broke. The chains immediately broke, and I was able to walk away from this man, you know, without even thinking twice about it. But then I got another story for you. So obviously, when you give your life to God, there are things that are going to come back in your life to try to tempt you.
Yes.
And that guy was one of them. And I was just like, you know what, God, like, I'm gonna be right back. Let me just.
Oh, so you was playing jump rope, double dutch.
Yep, I was playing double dutch with God. Like, okay, let me hop out, you know, worldly stuff real quick, and God, I'm gonna be right back. And then the entire time, God was just like, no, sis, no. He invited me on a trip to Miami, full paid trip or whatever, and I was finally 21, going to Miami, so I was just okay, cool. Long story short, the situation like ended really bad where I almost lost my life, and literally when I was at that point, close to being severely injured or losing my life, I was like, God, help me, please. And then like an angel came out of nowhere. And so let me tell y'all how dope God is, right? So God saved my life, pulled me out of that situation, even when I was being a little disobedient child.
You always do.
Every time, right? So God spared me my life, and he showed me grace, you know. And ever since then, I was just like, God, when you tell me to do something, I will be obedient. Because like my disobedience, after knowing who my father was, God, it almost cost me my life.
Exactly.
So for me to be playing with God, it's ultimately for me to be playing with my life. And
yeah.
No.
And you don't want him trying to get your attention, and you ain't listening.
Oh yeah, that's some harsh consequences. Okay, so for you, like, what are the areas that you've seen God work in? You know, like, what are some of your testimonies, or just areas where it's just like, that was no one but God? Like.
So I think for me, since I was always in church, it was more so when I noticed that I needed to realize the difference between religion and a relationship with God.
Because that is important. There is a difference.
Yes. So when I realized that I needed to actually focus on the relationship, you know, because you get in the habit of just going to church and it becoming routine, you know, but it's like you have to have purpose behind what you're doing, you know, and understanding that purpose and then working in that purpose.
And also, I mean, with religion versus relationship, religion, it's practices that you do that's ingrained in you because of how you were raised. It's not you really understanding why you're doing it. You're just doing it because you've been doing it, you know. But obviously with relationship, like, you have that deep connection. Yes. You know, like how a parent has to their child. You have that, and that deep connection, you know. So
as far as me coming to the realization that I need to put more emphasis on my relationship opposed to the just religion. This was when I was 24 and I moved to Korea.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that.
Yes. When I started to put that emphasis on relationship, I began to actually feel his presence. Like, it was just so peaceful. I could be walking down the street and just having a conversation with him.
Okay.
And I consider that my prayer, in a sense, like just having conversation, like having that relationship. So how is it that you're able or were able to discern when...
I'm still able. Because he's able.
Able to basically discern when God was moving in the situation or not?
Okay.
Something else.
So I would say... Man, I've been through so many trials. So when you become saved, they say God didn't say that the weapon wouldn't form. He just said that it would not prosper. So with that being said, I've been through so many trials and tribulations, but every time I go through these different trials, ooh, man.
I'm just glad that you don't look like what you've been through.
Hallelujah.
Beautiful.
Oh, thank you, baby. But anyway, so going through these trials, it seems like the hardest thing. But when I go through these trials, I pray harder. Because the way I look at it, when you go through a trial, I look at it as God trying to get my attention, or God trying to forcing me to grow,
teach you something new.
Yeah, so I can be elevated into the next position that he's trying to place me in.
Okay, so it's kind of like a lesson that he's preparing you to use for a later period.
Yes, definitely.
So he's hardening you for another task.
Definitely. So every trial and tribulation you go through, there's something to be learned out of it. But for me, knowing that God's hand is over it, because while you're going through the mud, while it sucks, while it just seems like you don't even want to live anymore, there's this calm. There's this calm that just, I can't even, and there's a peace that settles in your heart that basically just kind of soothes your nerves. It's just that's
that God's got it attitude.
Definitely. So it's just while you have all this chaos going on around you, God is just be still, my child, I got this. And then the more time you spend with God, the easier it is for you to hear his voice, because God speaks. He'll tell you some things. If you say, God, show me whether this man is the one for me, God will show you. He will. If he's not, he's gonna show you. If he is, God will show you and he'll speak to you. But you have to be in that space to listen. So I'm able to discern because I listen to God. I'm obedient. I study his word.
Yes,
I pray. I worship with him. So I'm in constant communication with him, so that even the slightest whisper that I get from him, I can hear it because I'm in that space. And I would say even with a busy lifestyle, you have to make time for God. I make time for God with being a wife, mother, all these different intersectionality dynamics of my life, driving to work in the morning. I listen to nothing but gospel and I'm worshiping while I'm on my way to work, and just constantly having an attitude of gratitude, and knowing that it was him that woke you up every morning. It wasn't you, and at the same time, there's nothing that we can do to earn the grace that God has shown us.
Exactly.
Okay, so for you, how are you able to discern whether it's God who's speaking to you or whether it's that little red man with the little horns on his head?
Well, the way I'm able to do that is basically by...
Do what?
Maintain the discerning spirit. Is basically by using my gift, singing in the choir, making sure that I'm active in my church.
So what does that do for you? How does that build that spirit of discernment for you?
So when I'm in that constant, communication, that line is always open with me and God, it fills me with ease, a calm, And whenever that ease and that calm is disturbed, I'm able to identify that as, okay, this is not of, it's not of God.
Okay.
You know, so.
And then so obviously you singing is, obviously you're worshiping God. So
yes.
that is another form of communication. Like worship is communication with God.
That too. That's definitely.
I guess what? So that worshiping in the church, but what about like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis that keeps you in that?
Another thing, so of course, yes, I worship in the church, but we also pray together. So the fact that we pray together, she'll have her music playing and things like that, a little vibe going. She used to be like, babe, let's go pray or whatever, but now it's like, you know, sometimes she'll just go and then I'll just be around, you know. Super dope.
A little funny story too. Every single time, like right before we pray, we would always get in an argument. Always get in an argument, but obviously that's having the spirit of discernment and knowing that
we need to do something about it.
Yeah, that the little red man is trying to, you know, distract us from serving God. So that's another, so Charles would get mad and then walk away, storm away, and then he'll come back. And he'll come back and kneel behind me and start praying. So, look at God.
So, what advice would you give a young lady who was seeking Christ?
So, the advice that I would give is this would be the best decision that you could ever make. For me, when God found me, I was just like, how come no one ever told me about him? Like, he's amazing. He's awesome. So, the advice that I would give is that God gives you hope. God gives you a sense of self-worth. Because before, my value was tied to how a man viewed me. But once I gave my life to God, it became, I saw myself the way that God saw me. Like, I'm the apple of God's eye. Like, I know I deserve everything this world has to give. So it just changed. It just increased my self-worth, increased my confidence. So as far as seeking God, understand that going to church, everyone in church is flawed. We're all struggling with something. So seek a relationship with God and not more so the people in the church. God is the one that's going to give you grace. He's the one who's going to bless you. God is the one that's going to orchestrate your life. The people in the church are not. And just one more thing, do not be deterred from serving God or going to church because of the people in the church. Understand that that is a place where you can fellowship, but at the same time, when you go home in the comfort of your own home, you still need to maintain your own personal relationship with God. And everything that I have in my life, like even down to this handsome man, is because of God. So
thank you.
That's good. All right, babe. So for you, what advice would you give a young man seeking Christ? And not to interrupt you yet, but I only bring that up because I know manhood is different. You know, just the concept of it may be a little bit harder for men to, well, in my opinion, for men to come to Christ.
Okay, so what would I tell a young man seeking Christ? Well, first, seeking Christ doesn't make you soft. Being vulnerable to God makes you vulnerable to God. And then also, you know, when you're vulnerable, you get into a safe space where you can, you know, pour out your heart to God and and this is why you want to be around like-minded people. You don't worry about what people are thinking, who's looking at you, because everyone is in that zone. I think we, you know, just as men, we put too much, we give other men too much power because we care more about what they think opposed to what he thinks or what God thinks. So I would say get involved in a church. This way you build relationships with, you know, like-minded people.
Christ-minded.
Also like-minded men. So get in a men's ministry. This way you have brothers to actually talk to them about either their developments or where they are or once was, and how did they get there.
Just steering you in the right direction.
Yeah,
basically.
pretty much. You know, finding those mentors. So giving your life to God is the best decision you could possibly make.
I hope we inspired somebody out there.
I hope somebody's inspired.
Hope God touched you through the screen.
That one, yeah, I see you.
Right?
Yeah.
Hallelujah. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. And once again, make sure you subscribe down below and hit that alert button so you can get our alerts.
Yes.
All right. Until next time.